Welcome to Two Open Doors, the podcast that explores our power to open or close the doors of relationship with the important people in our lives. We hope you'll learn from and share your wisdom with our community. Thanks for joining us. Hi, and welcome to Two Open Doors. This is a very special episode that we're having today. I have the pleasure of having really the mother of sex coaching, Dr. Patti Britton, as my guest today. And we have a wide array of topics that we're going to be discussing in the area of relationship and how sexuality and sensuality play into that. So I'm sure that you'll really enjoy and get a great deal of value from this conversation. Just to introduce Dr. Patti, I had the good fortune of meeting her first when I was a student at Sex Coach U, which she and her husband founded. It has been the seminal training ground, I think, for sex coaches. So if you're a sex coach with certification through Sex Coach U, you really have the chops. You've been put through the ringer. You've put in hundreds, at least, of hours of study, and they have a very good program. I would highly recommend that you investigate that. I then also benefited from having Dr. Patti on my doctoral dissertation committee at the Institute for Advanced Study of Human Sexuality in San Francisco, and that too was a great experience. With her knowledge and wisdom to guide me, I think I was able to do some really interesting seminal work on the human sexual response cycle. So I owe Dr. Patti a debt of gratitude, and I just enjoy the heck out of working with her. So I'm elated that she agreed to speak with us today on this interview. I think with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Patti if she wants to say anything by way of introduction, and then we'll dive right in.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Claude. Oh my God, we have been through so many great experiences together, and I do want to add a dimension, which is that Sex Coach U was co-founded with Dr. Robert Dunlap, who was my life partner. He wasn't my husband, but life partners. We lived outside those lines, and what I want to say is that when you were a student, it was really in its childhood evolution, and it has evolved so greatly since that time, as have you. You know, like everybody who graduates from Sex Coach U or similar programs is really what we call a baby sex coach. and then you really evolve and grow up and develop your skill base, your sensitivity, your sensibility, your understanding of what really gets you up in the morning, what's your true passion, who do you want to be serving. And so I want to say right off the bat that I'm just so proud of you. I'm so thrilled to be here to share with you today. And not only did you go through the Sex Coach U training program, which is the original in the world, and we're now in 80 countries and Puerto Rico, if you can imagine, with 180 graduates and 152 current students. And we have a team of about 16 people all around the world. So this is a wonderful, wonderful experience for anyone who really feels that calling to serve others toward their sexual wellness. That's what it's really about. And I have announced recently, as you know, that I am retiring from Sex Coach U by June of 2023, and really excited about not only opening a new venture, which will be beginning in around June in 2022. I'm actually opening a year-long elite group of high achievers in a mastermind program. And that's something I've never done before. So doesn't that sound like fun?
I think that whoever joins a program like that will have a great time and will come out truly in a world leadership position. There's just so many things that I admire about you, and not just the way you teach and your depth of knowledge, but honestly the way you lead your life. I think that you made a huge difference for me in learning to have trust in myself, to color outside the lines and take my own head. And it really I've burgeoned as a result of that. So, and I know you've done that for all my co-students. And so
it's true. I'm really about authenticity. I'm about self-realization. My healing model is toward helping our clients experience or achieve sexual self-realization, becoming fully who you can be. And the other thing that I want to say, Claude, is that your PhD, your doctoral work was mind boggling and mind blowing. You have this uncanny ability for everybody listening to deconstruct theoretical and practical models in this engineer head way, where you actually can construct new flowcharts, new models, new differentiations of how does the brain work, how does relationship work. It was so detailed and really high level intellect, as well as, you know, you actually came out with your model before Come As You Are came out as a book by Emily Nagoski, which began to normalize and really mainstream the dual control model and built on the work from those at the Kinsey Institute on the excitatory and the inhibitory systems in the neurological systems of the human body, the brain in particular, but the human nervous system. And yet you didn't know I'd be gushing all about you today, but you also had this compassion and this soft side, this side of caring and loving and openness, and holding space for clients and holding space for those who are listening to this podcast from such a gentle perspective. And we live in such a really tough time right now. Following the pandemic worldwide, we're currently having this conversation when there's an impending threat of World War III, and horrible things are happening in terms of Eastern Europe. Tragic, human against humanity crimes is what I want to call them, war crimes. But at the same time, we have to be loving and gentle, and you're really a role model for that, for males, for men who are listening. And that's a very important part of the work you do in the world.
You're absolutely right. In the United States, we seem to have, frankly, in many cases, a toxic model of what it is to be male. Just like the role for female is confused. And that's one of the reasons I'm very active in the local sex positive community, to help people re-examine and in some cases re-choose how they want to embrace their gender identity as well as their sexuality and sensuality. So you and I are very much pushing the cart in the same direction on that. I am not very far behind you in terms of world experience and age. I'm about to hit my 70 milestone, and that has just given me a depth of appreciation for the fact that we individuals can make a difference in the world, and we have to have the courage to take up our burden and try to make things better. And you're right, with all the turmoil going on right now, it's not going to right itself. We have to get out there and try to make a difference. So we're, you and I are partners on that. When you were talking about my dissertation, that was just a great on-ramp to something that inspired me and also helped guide me, which is your MEBS model of sexuality. This was really the first time that I had encountered a holistic perspective on what I had had as my personal experience of sexuality, that it's not just hydraulics and mechanics like so many people think it, you know. It's really it's in the heart, that is the emotions, and in the mind every bit as much as it is in physiology. And that was embedded in my EMP, or emotional, mental, physical model, that was the basis for my dissertation. And it also is in your MEBS model. So if you could talk briefly about that and the richness of sexuality as you see it, that'd be great.
Well, when I constructed the MEBS model, MEBES, I was in a situation where I had just created and founded a new way of working with clients to assist them in achieving that sexual self-awareness, or we'll call it sexual wellness, wholeness, and to be happy about who they were as a sexual being. At the same time, I I didn't have a role model for that because I didn't like the role models I was seeing. I was seeing pathology. I was seeing mental health make it a mental health disorder or a personality disorder. I was seeing physical issues that pharmaceuticals would fix or cure. And I see our sexuality is really part of our humanness, and it's whole person centered. And we have to look at what I call the 5 parts of the sexual self. I evolved this in the early 1990s as I was formulating what is sex coaching and why is this different from sex therapy and sexuality education and sex counseling and other ways of helping people either remove their blockages or experience the joy, the pleasure, the fulfillment of sexual intimacy. Now, we'll talk later, I'm sure, about sex and intimacy and are they the same or different? But what happened is that I was called to give a presentation at a congress or a conference in New England. Living in New York City, I had ties to New England. And I have a tendency when someone says, hey, would you like to give a talk on or do a workshop on? I tend to get all excited about it, and then I say, sure. And then I go, oh, my God, what have I done? Another thing I've said yes to. So I said, sure, I'll talk about how I work because I work in my own way. And my friend who worked there in the New England Holistic Conference, she said, it was a health conference, and she said, well, what is your system? Like, can you help other clinicians understand how they could replicate what you do? And I said, I don't know, I'll try. So that's how MEVES was born. I looked at the 5 aspects or the 5 parts of the sexual self. And I looked at and began to evolve this as I work with more and more and more clients. And it was an empirical model that sort of grew into itself becoming more valid and more tested and more whole. I looked at where is the client blocked in these 5 aspects of the sexual self: their mind, the mental realm, their emotional realm, their physical realm. That's the body for B. B stands for body image, huge issue, especially for women, and behaviors. When we think about sex, usually we think about what we do. And then I said, there's something missing. In fact, there are 2 other elements that I have observed, that I have experienced, and that I see as components of who we are as sexual beings. And those are E for energy and S for spirit. And so I put together this model where I looked at where a person could be blocked or stuck. Where is there not flow? And where in the 5 elements is there not flow between or among them? And then what do we do about it? Well, as coaches, we create action steps to help that client overcome or resolve their difficulty, their blockage. I don't like the word dysfunction. I don't like to use medicalization of what is some ways our normal, natural sexual experience. And so why I love coaching is it's depathologizing. It can be so collaborative and so much a relationship where I'm metaphorically holding the hand of my client and we're walking down this path together toward what it is they want to experience or achieve as a goal. So MEVES became the framework that I used with my clients consciously. Now I don't consciously use it. It's so entwined in everything I do. And began to train professionals in clinical sexology before Robert and I, opened Sex Coach U, and that is the pivotal model. That's the clinical assessment and then action model for how we help our clients get to where they want to be. So that's MEVES. There's more though. And this is maybe, Dr. Claude, this is an opportunity to talk about where we differ and where your EMP model is slightly different from the MEVES model, although I love your model. It moved me deeply when you presented that research. And my model, the MEVES model, has those other 2 components. So it has energy and spirit, and why those are there, and probably why a lot of the people who come into Sex Coach U now to be trained and certified as a competent, well-trained sexology professional, is because they want a more holistic approach to human life, to human love, to human sensuality, human experience, human connection. And energy is really, the MEBS model was originally developed as kind of a chart, right? Like at the top is the M, and then the E, and then the B, and then the E, and then the S. And then you fill in the blank to the right of these letters of where they're stuck. What is the client telling you they're stuck in, or how are they stuck? And then what can we provide for action steps? There's another way that we looked at the MEBS model, and that is looking at it as a wheel. And with no disrespect to traditional people, it is a medicine wheel, and it is a healing construct where there are 4 quadrants in this circle, and in the center, believe it or not, is E for energy, because we know, and we especially know if you follow the work of Greg Britton or Bruce Lipton or or even Einstein, energy is everything. Everything is run by energy. And so this wheel of life, of sexuality, or sexual self, is run by energy. And one of the 4 quadrants is spirit. And it's not spirit in the religious sense, although that can be a block. Let me tell you, I have many clients who have been betrayed by their religious background and values. But it's really about the essence of self. And you may not even know. I now refer to that as the little blue flame, kind of like the pilot light in the center of our abdomen where the hara is, that chakra. That's the center of our power that sits just above the second chakra, which is often regarded as the sacred chakra for our sexuality and our creativity. And so that little blue flame, for a lot of my clients anyway, the little blue flame is really tiny. It's barely lit. It's barely visible. It's like a pilot light on the stove or the heater. And part of, I think, our work as sex coaches is to help ignite that flame, or help the client really allow that flame to burn with pride, de-shaming themselves, and going for expression fully of who they are. So that's, I think, a differentiation. But maybe I don't have your EMP model right.
Well, it might interest you to know, in part, my views have evolved, but from the outset, I was both very aware of personally and crediting the reality and the importance of both the concept of energy and spirituality. Like many of the people that you refer to for whom religiosity can actually be an impediment, I went through that myself. I actually spent several months in a seminary considering becoming a priest because I want to be in service, and I believe I've always been deeply spiritual, but in the sense that of knowing that we're all deeply connected in some mysterious way. Energy, as the scientist and engineer that I am, I wrestle with what is that? I know from my personal reality how real it is, and there's still something missing there in our human knowledge, our understanding of how the world actually works. I absolutely believe that is the central motive force for us as human beings. But spirituality, for example, there have been brain studies that look at brain activity in the course of people having spiritual experiences. And to me, it is very closely tied to our emotional reality. In essence, I see spirituality as an expression on the emotional plane of the deep connection that we experience with one another. So, in a sense,
that's interesting. I like that.
Yeah, in a sense, you don't have to posit something beyond what we know of human nature when you look at it broadly to comprehend the reality of both energy and spirituality. And you're absolutely right. I mean, for me personally, both of those are central motive forces. So the last thing I would want to do is say, well, that's all woo-woo stuff that has no relevance to reality. You and I both know better. And you have to, we all need to have the intellectual modesty to just say, we don't know what we don't know, and trust our intuition enough to know when there's something there that we just don't fully understand yet.
And what's really interesting from my perspective as a clinical sexologist who's conducted sex research and sat on, I think, over 32 doctoral dissertations, and I'm on one right now, actually, which means that I have to steep myself in other people's use of research and understand that, and then the implications and outcomes. I think that there's a lot of knowing that many of us have who are healers and practitioners and educators. And what's happening in our world today because of the technology, particularly of neuroscience, is that now we're getting knowledge to substantiate our knowing. It's so cool. And I was just going to add one more perspective, which is that because I'm a follower of Bruce Lipton in particular, Greg Braden in addition, I had the privilege in 2018 of being in a live multi-day intensive workshop with the two of them and other speakers as well. And really seeing the application of quantum physics to the biological self. And I called this conference Hard Science Meets God. That's what it felt like. And it's almost like this merging and this marriage is occurring right now with our understanding of the brain in particular, and what used to be woo-woo thoughts that didn't have any scientific underpinnings are now becoming understood as real, including the fact that we are all connected. Everything is all connected. And you know, back to the Meebs model, energy is, you may agree or not agree, but what I say to my clients is, let's just think about this for a second. What is sexual behavior? What is sex? Okay, what do we think of as sex? So I have them really express and explain and deconstruct what sex means to them or how they define sex. And, you know, usually the mainstream audience is going to say sex is penis and vagina. That's the first thought that comes in. And I say, so actually, it's energy using these body parts from one body to another. That's what sex really is. It's actually an energy exchange, isn't it? And it just uses these really cool parts of our bodies.
It's true. And when you think about really the way science works, it's most productive when there's an underlying hypothesis. Call it a hunch, perhaps, that orients how you interpret things. And then you see if the data hangs together around that framework or not. So there is consistency, I think, between the way science works and the fact that we don't start off knowing anything, really. And you just build up this understanding, this evolving model of the world as you go. So that takes us in the direction of the notion of spiritual sexuality, which to me is the sweetest, the most expressive way in which human beings can connect. And you're right, the physical just serves as a vehicle, as a sort of language for connecting between two whole persons, which is body, soul, and spirit. It's way, way beyond just the mechanics of, you know, penis and vagina, which, by the way, in itself is a very narrow view of what sex is when you consider the so many other ways of sharing pleasure, which is really one of the main, in a sense, reasons for sex, right? Anyway, I wanted to say, Dr. Patti, since the last time we talked, I've been working on a direction that I call Two Open Doors. And Two Open Doors, I woke up one night thinking about the way hotel connecting doors work between adjacent rooms. When you want to join the two rooms, there are two back-to-back doors, right? And in order to be able to pass through, both people from their respective sides have to open their respective door. And when you do, then you can have free, you know, flow back and forth. So that just struck me as a great metaphor for the way relationship in general works. And you can riff off of that in any number of directions regarding, you know, which doors do I have open for the ones that are closed? Why do I have them closed? Is that what I want? Et cetera, et cetera. But it's all about the pursuit of deep human connection. And there again, we see a deep connection between our sexual expression, and by the way, sensuality, which, the beauty of touch, the messaging that we can send via touch is just so rich. That's all part of establishing a deep human connection, which is, in a sense, at a soul level. It certainly is. Intimacy is emotional connection between two human beings. So I always try to be careful to differentiate between sensuality, sexuality, and intimacy. They're all interrelated, but they're different concepts. So, talking about deep human connection, can you say a little bit about how you see sex and sensuality as helping to connect human beings deeply?
Well, we live in bodies, and our bodies are governed by our senses. We're governed by what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we smell, and touch, what we feel, sensorially. And often it's the closing off of our senses, of numbing ourselves out, of living on a computer screen 8 hours a day or more, or a smartphone screen 22 hours a day or more, and thinking that we're fully alive, and we're not. I have a lot to say about this, actually. I think in many ways, sexology, sex experts, all these self-help books have been promoting the idea that sensuality in itself is kind of a stepchild because it's a gateway to the real deal, which is sex or sexuality. Well, I consider sexuality to be who I know myself to be, and sex to be how I do, my expression of that. So sexual expression is really the language that I use, and sensual expression is different. I've written a whole book about this called The Complete Idiot's Guide to Sensual Massage, which came out in 2003. I co-authored it with a massage therapist. The truth is, I wrote all the words, and she figured out all of the touch exercises, and Dr. Robert was the victim on which she practiced. Poor man had to be massaged for months on end.
Yeah.
So
sign me up.
Yeah. So that whole book, which is still available, amazingly enough, at Amazon, The Complete Idiot's Guide to Sensual Massage, was never named properly. It should have been called The Complete Guide to Sensual Touch and Foreplay, because I know that many of our colleagues don't like the concept or the term foreplay because it puts pressure on the expectation that the main event is sex, S-E-X, penis and vagina, or penis in some other orifice, or fist in, or toy, or whatever, or tongue in. And so it's really not. To me, a lot of the work that I do is helping my clients open up their senses. That's what sensuality means. It means that your senses are evoked and activated, and you're conscious of your senses being pleasured, being awakened to a place where it allows you to connect, to experience pleasure, to be playful, to feel young again, to use as an anti-aging antidote, whatever it is. And sexuality is really, in one of the models that I've created, the following. I'm gonna just spell this out. So in both books, The Complete Idiot's Guide to Sensual Massage, and the primary book that I'm known for, The Art of Sex Coaching, I talk about it's the 5 levels of touch. And it's also known as the touch continuum. And it evolved out of watching people. And it evolved out of observing with my clients that they would get stuck. If, let's say, the wife comes home from her law job and the house partner is doing the dishes, we'll say it's a she, and wife comes home and smacks the partner's butt and says, "Hey, honey, I'm home. How was your day?" And the partner winces and goes, "I'm not ready for sex yet." So that's the disconnect that happens a lot, which is misreading touch cues. And you were talking about touch. Touch is such a powerful language. And by looking at these levels of touch, which are healing touch, leading to affectionate touch, that would be smacking somebody lightly, playfully on the butt and saying, hey, well, I love this butt. Or healing might be, oh, you have a neck ache. Oh, let me help you with that. And then after healing, affectionate, then the next level is sensual. So, oh, let me take out the massage lotion and just glide down your quad on your leg. And then after that is erotic. And then there's sexual. And often the difference between erotic is that erotic is when we wake up. Erotic is when we want, desire. We're pushing toward either expressing that or just bathing in that energy. Again, it's all about energy and tone. And sexual usually involves the sexual parts of the body. So there, I differentiate sensuality and sexuality in terms of these 5 levels of touch for sure. And I think that there's way too much talk as people age, in particular, like you and me, about, well, forget about sex, just be sensual. Everybody is entitled to full sexual expression and to live their full sexual potential, regardless of their age. They may need us as coaches, Claude, to help them understand, how can I do that? However, we're here to say you can, right?
Yeah, I have absolutely thought of that. To me, our sexuality is life energy. It's what keeps us connected to and immersed in life. And when you relinquish that, you're starting the death process. It sounds like an extreme way of viewing it, but you are putting an essential part of your humanity on ice. And not a good thing, I think.
But you know, I'm going to interject something. Here's what I want to interject. I think that our sexual energy is in many ways tolerated more than our erotic energy. I think our erotic energy is actually so subtle and elusive sometimes.
Actually, this takes us in the direction of one of the things I wanted to treat with you, which is the observation that our society seems to be deeply conflicted about sex, even though sex is a big part of who we are. And of course, the marketing types in our culture use sex as a lever to see what they can, incite people to buy, basically. But what do you see that people can do to get more comfortable with embracing their healthy sexuality?
That's a long answer. How to embrace a healthy sexuality? Well, I think that it all begins with permission. And in some of the models that many of us as sexologists who educate and train others use, there's a model that is really popular that we use with our clients called Plissit. And it was created in the 1970s by Dr. Jack Annan, Plissit, and it's divided into 3 sections. Well, actually 4. And those sections are P for permission. Why I'm bringing it up is that I actually feel so strongly that if we as humans could give ourselves permission, and then you fill in the blank, permission to fantasize, permission to explore, permission to experiment, permission to be 30 pounds overweight and be okay with it, permission to not be sexual, permission to explore same-sex engagement, permission to do anything. You can fill that blank in with anything. Giving ourselves permission is actually how we begin to grow into healthy sexuality. And I also think that sometimes we need to be much more judicious and schooled about what is the truth, because we live in an electronic universe where when we have a medical ailment, what do we do first? We go to Dr. Google, right? Like, oh my God, maybe this is cancer. Let me Google that. And you know, there are authentic sources of information, and then there's so much noise out there on what is true, what is a good strategy, what is a good approach. And I'm going to say, if you've explored on your own, those of you who are listening, if you've explored things on your own and you're still feeling stuck, or you're feeling like, I don't know how to have healthy sexuality, I compulsively masturbate to porn every night for 6 hours, maybe even while my partner is sleeping in bed. Look at the movie Don John. It's a great example of that. Or maybe someone is just feeling like I'm sexually dead. I don't know how to enliven myself. I don't know how to wake up. I've been alone. I could be like my situation. I was a widow. I was widowed because my life partner suddenly died unexpectedly at a younger age than anyone expected, and had to go through that grieving period, that period of intense grief, and facing the loss and understanding the changes in my life that were happening and that were about to happen, and doing the work to heal, and then coming through the other side and saying, who am I now? Who am I now as, a sexual person who's in her 70s, single? How do I navigate that? So giving permission to do that exploration and to learn all you can. But there's going to be a point for a lot of people, particularly couples in long-term relationships, where they're sexless, where sex is dead, where that energy you talked about, Claude, that life energy pulsating through, and the desire and the connection isn't there at all, which is what happens to many, many people. You may need a sex coach. You may need someone to be there and guide you and hold you in this kind of energy nest so that you can heal, and then you can learn, and you can grow, and you can thrive. So healthy sexuality, we in this world have definitions for what is sexual health, but we actually do not have a universal definition of what is healthy sexuality. And I would say it's whatever gives you pleasure, whatever makes you feel good about yourself, good about your behaviors, good about your body, good about your fantasies or your thoughts, etc.
Let's try to net out what we've talked about so far, and then if you would talk a little bit about your future directions, because that's really exciting stuff. And I want to know personally what you see in your future. I know you have lots of additional value to give still, and I want to hear about it.
Well, I think, those of you who are listening, you've heard our riff, as we call it, on lots of topics. And so I hope you're getting some great ideas and feeling validated and, quote, normalized for who you are. That's really my wish, and that you feel good about your own journey as a sexual being, because it's lifelong. I guess that what I would like to share is that, I'm a little older than you, not much, but a little. And when I turned 75, I realized we look at life differently when we get big numbers on our birthdays. And turning that age, and I know I don't look it, I don't sound it, I don't feel it. However, it is my chronology. That is my reality. And I look at, well, how much more time do I have left? And what do I want to do with it? And I have at least 3 books that I want to write that are a memoir trilogy. One about my own life and evolution, which is really the story of how Patti became Dr. Patti and yet stayed Patti underneath it all. And one also about Dr. Robert and the amazing journey that we had as a couple, and about his lack of preparedness and most baby boomers' lack of preparedness to talk about death and dying. And also, I'm working on a documentary of my career and my contributions with a documentary team. So that should keep me kind of busy. And I have a lot of travel on my vision board. I really want to go to South Africa, where I have friends and colleagues. The World Congress of Sexology last year was to be held in person in Cape Town, South Africa, and of course we couldn't. We had it virtual, but I long to go there, and other places as well. So travel is on the docket. And I lead these 6-day experiential intensives that are really advanced sexological trainings for professionals. And once things are safe in the world for travel, I intend to re-offer those, which are often led in the beauty and the nature and the woods of Poland, which is my international training center. And also, I'm going to be offering, we talked about earlier, that year-long opportunity for people who want to sit with me live once a week in a think tank kind of experience for one whole solid year's experience together, so that I can help empower people, help them get their businesses to flourish, help them work with clients at the highest level possible, and share my own stories, my wins and my losses. So that mastermind program is opening soon. That's really my great passion project. And who knows what else. So that's what's in store for me. And I just love having this conversation with you, Claude, because we're all in this together, and the world so needs sexual healing, and the world so needs comfort and assurance and a feeling that we're safe somewhere, and that pleasure really is our medicine that we all need to be taking. So there it is.
Oh, that's all really exciting. I'm not surprised at all that you have a full docket ahead of you and continued value to deliver still. I feel very much like a compatriot, like someone who will be following in your footsteps in some cases and blazing my own path. But in both cases, it's going to be to help make the world a better place, I think, as best we can. Like you, I think I want to leave it in better condition than when I arrived. And I have found, with your help, this area of human sexuality and everything that entails, that is an area of fantastic need where I can contribute. So I think our paths will remain intertwined going forward, and I certainly wish you the best in all of the enterprises that lie ahead for you. Really excited for you. And once again, just my sincere, heartfelt thanks for sharing some of your wisdom and your time today. And perhaps in future we can look at some of the many other numerous important aspects of sexuality and sensuality and intimacy that are all essential to thriving relationships, which is really what Two Open Doors is about.
Beautiful. Thank you, Claude.